I spent the next 2 days alone in my room before Saturday came around. We didn't talk about what happened at my school, preferring not to think about it. That isn't to say my parents were trying to ignore it. They just didn't want to deal with it at that time. We headed to the rec center 2 hours before the festivities officially began. There are two parts to the celebration. The first takes place during the day and the other at night. The former consists of outside games, hay rides, and a community barbecue. The food brought to it is usually festive in some way. For example, someone will often bring hot dogs wrapped in puff pastry with mustard eyes to look like mummies. My personal favorite are the gross out stuff. Food meant to resemble brains, guts, and things of that nature. I still wasn't in a great mood when we arrived. My plan for the event was simple. I was going to grab a big plate of food, find a secluded area, and spend my time reading. Books and stories in general are something that helped me take my mind off my troubles. They still do, although I tend to listen more than read nowadays. Anyway, when we pulled up, Chuck was there to greet my parents. He's the town sheriff. My parents got out and shook hands with him. "Darcy, Mark, thanks for helping out." "Don't mention it, Chuck," my dad replied. Chuck's smile dropped upon seeing me. "Your parents told me about what happened at your school. Jerry's going to be here, so I want your word that you and him won't fight. Sure, if he does it, do I have your word or not?" "Fine." "Good. Now, if you don't mind, we're going to need your help too." I did mind, but knew if I said no, my parents would make me do it anyway. I helped with setting up the tables and putting out the food. When I was through with that, I found a nearby bench to sit on, then pulled out the paperback I was keeping in my jacket pocket. Something people of my town have gotten used to is the feeling of being watched. Most of the time, it's easy to ignore. After all, there's usually plenty of time before they come out to go inside. With that being said, however, sometimes the feeling can get more intense than usual. I experienced it while trying to read. I felt something in the surrounding woods focus its gaze on me. The unnerving thing wasn't entirely the fact that it was looking at me. It was the fact that it was looking at me specifically. I felt like I was being singled out, akin to a warthog being stalked by a lion. I glanced into the forest and didn't notice anything out of the ordinary at first. Then I noticed something. Two black orbs, even darker than the most shadowy parts of the woods, were visible. It took me a moment to realize that I was looking at a pair of eyes. What they were attached to, I had no idea, and that put me on edge. I didn't want to look away, though. I'm not entirely sure why. It almost felt like a challenge. Do you know how wildlife experts say it's a bad idea to turn your back on big cats? It was sort of like that. "Pete," I heard Chuck say, causing my attention to shift to him. "Your parents need your help inside with something." "All right. What are you looking at? Were you just daydreaming?" I glanced back at the woods to find that the orbs were no longer there. I thought I saw something. "Do you know of any creatures around here with all black eyes?" He wrinkled his brow in thought. "Not that I can think of, but we'll keep a lookout for one just in case. Anyway, your parents are in the gym. Don't keep them waiting, and remember what I told you." "Yeah, got it." My parents required my assistance in putting up some of the inside decorations. During this, I asked them about what I had seen. "I haven't seen anything like that. Have you, Darcy?" My mom shook her head and spoke to me. "Pete, are you sure you weren't imagining things? The woods can mess with your head, you know." That was true. There were several incidents in our town of people going into the woods only to never be seen again. Well, never seen alive, I should say. For that reason, most of us in town tend to avoid going into them. There are a few exceptions to this. One of them is in the case of search parties. A well-prepared group of at least 6 is ideal for safety so long as nobody wanders off, although sometimes quantity doesn't matter so much as quality. I'm not sure, I replied to my mom. Well, in case it is something, don't wander too close to the woods. We soon finished decorating, and I was able to go back outside. I didn't see the orbs again for a while. I chose not to dwell on it and tried to relax. I grabbed some jack-o'-lantern and a ghost-shaped sliced pizza for reading snacks along with some root beer, then returned to the bench that I was sitting on earlier. I thought I would be able to enjoy the rest of my day in relative peace. That wasn't the case. Halfway through a chapter, someone knocked my book out of my hands. The person in question who did it was Jerry's older brother. Looking back, his anger towards me for what I did to his brother was understandable. At the time, though, I became incredibly pissed off at him for ruining my peace and quiet. What do you want, Sean? I heard about what you did to Jerry. In spite of my irritation, I tried de-escalating the situation. Look, I promised Chuck I wouldn't get into any trouble. I haven't even seen Jerry today, so just leave me alone and there won't be any problems. Then apologize to him for what you did. This was another instance where I could have ended a conflict by biting the bullet. Instead, what came out of my mouth was, "The hell I will. I'm not the one who started that fight." I called it a fight, but it was really more of a blind rage beatdown. "Do it, or I'll kick your ass right now," Sean glared at me. When I refused, he threw the first punch. Since I saw it coming, I had tensed my jaw up beforehand. That didn't stop it from hurting. He tried to hit me again, so I kneed him in the stomach. Then he yanked me by my shirt, and we both tumbled to the ground. A short period of us rolling around on the ground, exchanging punches, went by before our scrap was broken up. "Pete, what did we tell you?" my dad said after pulling me off of Sean. He was there along with my mom, Chuck, Jerry, and Jerry and Sean's parents. Jerry's right arm was in a cast, and I could see some stitches along his left eyebrow. "I didn't start this," I replied. "Then who did?" my mom asked. We each tried explaining our side of the issue. However, all that happened was that we ended up screaming over each other. Our parents tried being civil with one another, but that too soon became a shouting match. "All right, enough," Chuck yelled, breaking up our arguments. "You all need to sort this out, or I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave." At that, the argument stopped. In order to keep the peace, I was sent inside. I was fine with that, since I was under the impression I would be away from people. My parents had other plans for me. They didn't believe in physical punishments, and instead got creative. Honestly, the occasional beating would have been preferred to what I was made to do. The summer before this, I got mad at one of our neighbors and vandalized their mailbox. To make up for it, I was forced to spend most of June handling their chores. And keep in mind, they live in a 2-story house with a super cluttered garage. They'd always have something heavy for me to lift. My arms and legs were practically screaming at me by the time I got through with each day. On the plus side, it improved my physique, so it did benefit me some. What my parents were making me do now was handle the janitor's job for the party. "Why do I have to do this when I was only trying to defend myself?" I protested. "You could have kept things from going that far," my mom told me. "So I should have apologized to Jerry?" "I'm not saying that. I think what your mom is trying to tell you is that you need to find ways to keep situations from getting out of hand." "I tried." "No, you didn't. You could have walked away and told someone. Instead, you chose to stay, and things got out of hand." "Your dad's right, Pete. You need to learn how to be more selective about getting into fights. We know you get angry, but you can't keep letting that get the better of you. Now, go help out." While the rest of the attendees were enjoying themselves, I had to clean up after everyone. I saw Sean, who smirked while flipping me off when nobody was paying attention. Not wanting to get in any more trouble, I chose to ignore him and continue working. The entire time I felt myself burn up. Whether it was from my anger or getting punched numerous times, I'm not sure. Probably both. One kid ended up eating too much, causing them to puke. As I was cleaning their vomit, I felt it again. A shudder ran through me. I turned around to see them again, those orbs. Now I knew it seemed to be singling me out. Why it was, I had no clue. I suddenly didn't feel very safe. I tried telling a nearby cop. Of course, when he came over, they were gone. He told me to get back to work, and I kept at it. Thankfully, when it was time for everyone to go inside, I was allowed to take a short break. Pete? I looked up from my book to see Mr. Formaggio trying to get my attention. At that point, I didn't know him or his wife that well. I had eaten at their restaurant a few times, and they and my parents got along well, even engaging in conversation sometimes. However, I'd never really interacted with them beyond the occasional small talk. What is it? I asked. We're going to need more drinks. Can you head downstairs and grab some? Sure. How many should I get? There are baskets by the soda. Fill them with what you can. The rec center had a basement that was far less bright compared to upstairs. The dim light hardly provided suitable visibility. Still, I was able to navigate it pretty well. As I was walking, something made me stop. I thought I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. Turning towards it showed me nothing seemed to be amiss. That didn't stop me from getting a bad feeling. Against my better judgment and basic common sense in general, I didn't immediately run back upstairs. In my defense, I was under the impression that nothing could get into the building. After all, it had all the rooms needed to protect from every creature in our town. At least, they guarded against the ones that we knew of. I located the soda and proceeded to fill a basket with some 2 liters. Once done, I went to leave and nearly dropped the basket. There was something off about my shadow. The best way I could explain it is that it is almost as if it had too much presence. I stared down at it, unsure if my mind was playing tricks on me or if I should be concerned for my safety. What happened next erased the former as a possibility and made me know that I was in some deep shit. My shadow opened its eyes, revealing 2 black orbs even darker than it.